guys. So cheers. Cheers to me finally being back in my creative space. Um, I took some time off because, of course, I was expecting, I was with the child, and I had a little bit of a rough pregnancy the last couple of months. So it was like a lot going on there. But yeah, so I finally, had my baby boy, and now I'm back in my creative space, and I'm so excited. I'm excited to be back making videos and all that jazz. So I decided, as far as to celebrate me finally being able to come back into my creative space and just get back into the place that I just love to. Don't get me wrong, I love being a mom, but I love my creative space. So, in honor or to celebrate me getting back into my creative space, I decided to just make a video showing you guys, or pretty much telling you guys pretty much my creative design process and how I go from start to finish when it comes to designing something all the way into the process of selling it and all that kind of stuff. Now, for this particular video, I'm only going to be focusing on the creative design process. But when it comes to the overall concept of the process and the steps that I take to start off, as far as like start from the beginning to the end of actually selling a piece of merchandise, whether it was requested from a client or whether it was me just designing something and wanting to sell it for profit, I pretty much take 7 steps, and the 7 steps include the creative design planning process, which is like my brainstorming step. And this is where I pretty much just gather all of my inspiration, put my inspirational things together and just gather different inspiration, and I write key terms of certain things that I may want to incorporate in this specific design. So I make a list of like key descriptive design terms during this process, and it's pretty much like my brainstorming process. And then my second step is actually designing the design process. So it's actually designing the piece based off of the inspiration that I did, or that I pretty much gathered together from my first step. And then the third thing that I do is my pattern making process. So during the pattern making process, I'm drafting my pattern, I'm creating samples of my pattern to make adjustments and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm determining like the sizing and the sizes for that particular design. And the fourth step is the actual construction of the garment. So this is my sewing process, where I pretty much have finalized the pattern, and pretty much I finalized the pattern through the sample making and all that kind of stuff, making those adjustments and all that stuff. And now I'm actually constructing the garment using the fabric that I've chosen to go with this specific design. And I didn't mention this before, but as far as the fabric choosing process, I pretty much through the design process with the second step, the design process, that consists of pretty much me looking at different fabrics and choosing different fabrics. So that will be a part of my step 2, to where I'm gathering different fabric options and putting those different fabric options together in step 2. And then step 4, when I'm actually constructing the garment, I'm taking those fabric options and I'm applying them to my pattern, which is pretty much creating that garment to determine if the fabric is going to be a great choice, if I want to go with another fabric, what are the many different types of fabric that I want to use. Excuse me. But what are the many different types of fabric that I may want to use. So that is the garment construction process. And then for step 5, that I pretty much finalize everything. So I finalize the design, I finalize the pattern, I finalize the size, and I finalize the fabric of choice. So that is the step 5 is pretty much my finalization process, or my final step before actually producing the final product. So it's like I'm producing the final product within this final step. And then the sixth step will be, of course, me marketing it. Pretty much my sixth step will be presenting it to the market. So it's whether it's me, giving it to my client who may have requested a custom order, or if I want to sell it on a certain platform where I sell my different designs or stuff like that. Or even when it comes to maybe with my YouTube channel, if I want to present it on my YouTube channel or whatever, I pretty much bring it to the forefront and present it to the market and showing that particular design. And step 7, of course, is selling it. So the step 7 is because even when I create certain designs or create certain pieces for YouTube tutorials, I still end up selling those pieces or whatever. And like I said, sometimes it can be me just putting something on the market or on a certain platform where I may sell certain items. And yeah, so I'm releasing it off and, giving it away to the customer. So those are my 7 steps, my 7 overall steps of how I get from start to finish when it comes to my design process. Now for this video, I'm only going to be focusing on those first 2 steps, and that is the creative design planning, which is my brainstorming step, and the actual design process or whatever. So I want to give you, I have, do I have 5? Okay, yeah. Okay, so like I said, I want to focus on the creative design process for this particular video. So for my creative design process, the first thing that I do for my creative design process, I find my inspiration. So I find inspiration, and pretty much you can gather inspiration from really anything. You can literally get inspiration from watching TV, from going out to an event, from just sitting there thinking, just being in your thoughts, reading a magazine, watching old films, and doing your own particular research as far as researching actual different fashions in different eras, being inspired by fashion designers, current fashion designers, previous fashion designers, super famous fashion designers, all the way down to those independent fashion designers that you may know in particular. You can get inspired by architecture, art. I think I stated magazines already, but magazines, as far as like cultural inspiration. So you can get inspired from many different cultures. Even if you're not necessarily a part of a particular culture, you can research that culture and, just like maybe watch some films that involve that culture. Even if you don't understand the language or, what they're saying, you could be watching the film particularly just to be looking at the different fashions and just pretty much wanting to take in the art of that culture. Fashion trends, you can get inspired by trending fashions for a particular season, or what's trending on social media or within the fashion world or whatever. And you can get inspired by colors, fabrics. Your creative design process can start from you seeing a fabric in a store and thinking to yourself, oh wow, that would look great as a shirt, or that would look great as a gown. So you might see a particular fabric while you're at the fabric store, and you might get inspired by that fabric. Certain themes, whether it's a holiday theme or whether it is a like a baby shower, maternity, or like pretty much like a different theme or whatever. So you can get inspired by a theme. You can get inspired by maybe even like political influences, or, through your morals, if you might be, wanting to do a particular thing because of something that you may believe or, believe in personally, that you want to kind of make a political statement. You can get inspired by that. You can get inspired by body shapes, as far as like, petite, small women to plus size, tall women, or those women in between. Or you pretty much, if you see like there's not really much of a market of clothing or a particular garment or item for a particular body shape, you can get your inspiration from that or whatever. And you can get your inspiration from people, as like certain muses. You can have a best friend who you just love her style and how she puts certain things together, or whatever the case may be, and she can become your muse to where you get inspired by her, or just people around you. You can get inspired by certain genders, male, female, and you can get inspired by a particular age group, whether it's children's clothing, or all the way up to senior citizens. I don't know, whatever floats your boat. Whatever floats your boat. You can get inspired by a particular career, as far as like, if you're the consumer who you want to sell to may have a particular career that you're inspired by, or whatever. You can get inspired by careers. You can get inspired by so many different things. So you pretty much grab and take in inspiration where you can get it. Even if you're not going to do anything with that inspiration at that moment, take in that inspiration. And I'm actually going to be showing you guys an inspiration binder. It's pretty much something that I create, to where I gather certain pieces of inspiration, whether it's me doing some kind of random sketch or me seeing something in a magazine and all that kind of stuff. I gather that stuff and I keep it in a binder. I call it my inspiration binder. And I love to go to my inspiration binder when I'm needing a little bit of inspiration, when I'm designing something or I'm thinking of something to create. And I also have a design detail binder where I, do my, pretty much, because I'm a self-taught designer. So I also have a design detail binder where I gather information, research information on certain design details for certain garments, and I gather that information, put it in a binder, and I use it for reference when I'm designing as well. And I also have a fabric swatch. Binder, and I believe I've mentioned that in the video before. But I collect different pieces of fabric from so many different, I pretty much get fabric samples from textile companies, or I go to the thrift store, see a certain fabric that I may like, and I buy that piece or that item from a thrift store just because I like the fabric. And so I'm going to do a separate video on those 3 DIY binders that I've created to help me along with my during my creative design process. So I'm going to make sure I film that video and get that video out to you guys, so you guys can get inspired to maybe start creating your own DIY resources, especially if you are a self-taught designer. If you're someone who you're just a creative, you design through your freedom of creativity, and not necessarily because you're in school and you're having to do it this particular way. And it's just like, yeah, you kind of have that freedom to just get yourself your own DIY inspiration binder, or design detail binder, or fabric binder, whatever the case may be. So I'm gonna make sure I get that video out for you guys. But back to my point. Yeah, so I have those different binders, those 3 different binders that I pretty much use as a reference during my design process, that I absolutely love. So the next step in my creative design process is pretty much I do design planning and brainstorming from the inspiration that I gather. So what I do in this process is I use just a pencil and a piece of paper, and I just write things down. I try not to sketch during this process. What I like to do is pretty much develop fashion terminology, and I like to just make a list using certain design detail as far as like fashion terminology for certain design details, I like to make a list of specific descriptive design details by just writing out the words, not sketching, not doing any of that stuff, none of that. I just like to write descriptive words of what I would like to see in this design, or pretty much what I gathered from the inspiration, what inspired me the most during my inspiration, during the process of me finding the inspiration and all that kind of stuff. So yes, I just create a list of design details and I use words only for the brainstorming process. I don't know if you guys ever had like a brainstorming type of situation where you literally were just sitting there brainstorming about something random and you're just writing it down. So this is my process. This is how I do it. So I just write it down. I research the design details and I write down descriptions of certain design details that I may want in this particular design. And yeah, so that is my brainstorming process, which is the next thing that I do after finding that inspiration. So I pretty much brainstorm from the inspiration that I found in step 1. Now for step 3, this is when I take those written design details and I develop a quick sketch from those written design details to give myself a visual of the written descriptions. So using all the words and the terminology and the descriptions that I wrote down in my step 2 of my brainstorming, I'm now applying that through a sketch. And with the sketch, it's not like a professional. I'm not one of those I'm not one of those fashion designers who try to do a super professional, like as long as I am able to discern or determine what exactly the vision is that I'm trying to establish, and I can interpret that, then I'm all good. Now, if you're working under another design company and you're formally working for someone else, then you may have to have those skills and take your time when developing that sketch, as far as like presenting that sketch to someone formally. Like for instance, when I'm sketching, if a client decides that they want excuse me okay, so for an example, sometimes I do develop sketches for clients who give me certain design details themselves, and they allow me to kind of figure out a way that I want to design that. And I will take my time with that type of sketch to present it to them, so they are able to interpret what exactly it is that I'm doing or what I'm trying to do. But when I'm in my own zone and just doing something for me, I don't take the time like that, because I'm literally just trying to get all of the things that's in my mind on that paper to create that vision for it. So this is my sketching. Step 3 is like pretty much me applying the design details into the sketch. And what I do as well is, once I get that visual, I'm pretty much deciding, okay, do I want this neckline? Do I want this type of neckline with this sleeve, or is that going to work? Or maybe pretty much when I put together the design detail list, and then now I'm seeing the visual of those details, I'm seeing that, okay, this sleeve might not work with this neckline, or this, you know what I mean? So it's like now I'm able to visually see things that I may want to change as far as the design details. And once I get that finalized, I of course write down all of my design details, and I write down the description of those design details. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the sketching part of my the sketching part of the sketching process. So that's like step 3. And step 4 is me choosing the fabric. So I consider the structure of the design, I consider the fit of the design, I consider how I want the design to lay on the body, I consider the texture that I may want for the fabric, I consider the stretch, the drape, in the structure and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to me choosing the fabric, I pretty much develop many different fabric options, because some designs that I create, they will look great with, as far as structurally, as more structured and stiff, with a more structured and stiff fabric, and they will also look well with a more loose and flowy fabric. So it all depends on the vision that I have. And if I do want to develop that design into 2 different types of fabric, then I will determine and test, to see if that design will actually work. So the thing is, with the fabric, with my fabric choice, the fabric may change once the sampling process begins, because once I start seeing how the design is working with the actual fabric of choice, then that helps me determine if I want to keep this fabric with this particular design. So that's pretty much like a part of my creative design process, and everything that I do in those first steps, as far as like the creative portion, as far as developing the actual design. And there's other steps that I take. I'm going to go over those steps in another video, but I hope that this video was helpful for you guys, and I hope it inspired you guys to maybe think about your own creative design process, and maybe think about establishing a creative design process to determine, or to pretty much help inspire you throughout the process, and pretty much make your design process a lot easier. Make your design process fun. Make your design process cater to your way of thinking and your flow of thinking, and how because you may be someone who initially probably have your fabric to be your first step in your creative design process, and you might be inspired, because at the end of the day, depending on how you're inspired will determine how your design process go. But have something in place that will help you just be creatively loose and free, and not so anxious, if that makes sense. It like simplify the creative process to where it really makes things a lot funner. It makes things a lot more just creative focused, So I hope this helped you guys, and I can't wait to share more with you guys, and I'm excited for the new year. I hope you guys are excited for the new year, and yeah, so I hope this helped someone. But I'm going to go ahead and end this video here, and remember to always embrace every part of you and be beautifully you, and I'll see you guys in my next video. All right, bye guys.